Holdfast, Nations at War. Hello and welcome to the Creaky Cuties. I'm Monk today as we are doing a review for Holdfast, Nations at War. Now, this game is an online multiplayer first and third person roleplay shooter game in which the community take the forefront and you take part in historical clashes on land. This is a really interesting game because it is, an online multiplayer game. So you have to, you can go in with friends. You can play with multiple different people. This is cross-play as well. It's currently on the Xbox, the PlayStation, and Steam, I believe. It will set you back around $19.99, depending, of course, on which platform you're buying it on. Now, this is a smaller game. Like I said, it's not a full price game. It's quite a cheap game. It's a multiplayer game. It's an interesting game because, like I said, you can play this with friends. You can play it with a lot of different friends. You can play both like olden style wars. So what I've got right now, you've got like muskets that fire one shot. You can whip out a sword or use your bayonet, whatever. You're taking on cavalry, that kind of thing. The battlefields themselves that you're playing on are actually quite large. In fact, I was surprised at just how much of a battlefield you actually have. You can play with up to 150 players in one server, which again is quite a large number. So that's 75 on both teams. And of course, as well as the olden day style, you can also play during the World Wars, and you'll have, relatively modern guns, or at least a lot more modern than the other mode or the other era that you're going to be playing in. I quite like the fact that you can not only you can pick from a number of different classes, actually, like a lot of different classes. Depending on which age you're in, but it doesn't matter which age you're in a lot of different classes with a few different weapons. There's a few different rifles, pistols, melee weapons that you can use. There's also some novelty items as well, like you can go out there with drums, for instance, and kind of try and pep up your team. You could go out there as an officer and try and inspire your team. You got that as a carpenter and do this, that, and the other, as well as bury an axe in someone's head, of course. And you can also put together cannons and use cannons, which again is quite cool. You actually have to manually load said cannon. One of the things that I used to quite like doing while playing the game was trying to find a way around enemy lines and sneak up behind where they, were encamped. I always found that the enemies seemed to be really, really shocked and surprised whenever I'd done this. It was quite a lot of fun to surprise the enemy like that. Melee weapons were very, very overpowered while I was playing as well. Pretty much, I think it was 2 hits. It could be 1 hit depending on the melee weapon, but it was very powerful because, of course, if someone is, operating in the 1800s with a musket rifle and they fired their shot, it takes them a good amount of time to actually go ahead and reload their weapon. And something for you to be, aware of is that very thing, is that it does take a long time for you to reload your weapon. Aiming in this game was quite difficult as well. There are no scopes on any of these weapons, at least none that I used. So actually trying to, pinpoint some of these shots was rather difficult. However, what I will say is it is pretty much one-shot kill. So if you do actually shoot someone, they're going to be dead. Unless you're shooting them with a pistol, obviously that's a slightly less caliber weapon, and therefore maybe it would take a couple of shots in order, for you to be able to get them. But it's quite a lot to this game. On first appearances, it's a very simple game. Graphically, this game doesn't look amazing. Technically, this game doesn't function as smooth as you would like. I mean, some of the combat, some of the interactions with the UI is incredibly clumsy and clunky and frustrating at times. I think when you very first start playing, you're probably going to have to go into the sensitivity settings, because I feel like this is a game that was definitely made for PC players, and unfortunately I was playing this on the console. I was playing it on the Xbox Series X, and so I had to turn down the sensitivity just so that way I could, comfortably use the gun and run around the field while not giving myself an absolute headache because the screen was going bloody everywhere at the time. That being said, I certainly had a laugh. I certainly had a bubble. The game can be absolutely hilarious. The next one that I found is that I managed to literally hide in a bush and no one could see me. No one could see me in one of those bushes because they're literally man-sized. So when you walk in and no one knows you're there, which means I could pop out behind them with a pistol, pow, 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 and it was quite a lot of fun to kind of experiment with the game and the mechanics that it actually had. But that being said, it can be very frustrating at times too, just because of the pure clunky nature of this game and just the way it worked. However, I did experience no dashboards or glitches or anything game breaking. The game, on launch, on the days that I had it, worked as intended, which in 2025 is a massive plus to them. I think this is certainly a game that can. Progress and I can add to it, and I think that it's one that will evolve over time. There's plenty of maps and there's plenty of variation that I've played so far as well. Again, I haven't been able to play extensively because of course I had this before it was released, so there just wasn't enough influx of players to really feel like we were stress testing it to the absolute max. But on release it did have hundreds and hundreds of players going in. Again, this is crossplay as well, so if someone owns it on the PC or if someone owns it on the PlayStation or on the Xbox, you're going to be able to play with all your friends, which is always nice. I think every game in this day and age should be crossplay. The only other real downside was when you got to be on horseback. That was rather difficult. I was pleased that it was an added option, and being a mounted cavalry was really strong, but it was so hard to use my horse and to, navigate the surroundings. It just wasn't something that was fun, shall we say. But running around with a drum, now that was fun. And you can actually change the different beats and stuff in there as well, which is quite cool. There's also a variety of different instruments depending on which era you are or what class you want to take. So keep that in mind for when you play. I'm going to give this game a 5.5 out of 10. Like I said, this game did work as intended, but it was far too frustrating and clunky, and I do think it needs a little bit of work on the sensitivity side for console players as well. As ever, guys, if you've watched to the very end of this review, don't forget to comment red banana down below just to confuse all those people new to the channel or that didn't watch to the very end. And of course, if you do end up picking this game up, let me know how you get on down in the comments. Until next time, I've been a Mark, you've been Chris Kudos, and I will see you in the next video real soon. Until then, take it easy and happy gaming.